So everybody knows the myth that we only use 10% of our brains, right? Which is weird because if you were only using 10% of your brain, you wouldn't be looking to unlock hidden genius. You'd be looking to receive urgent medical attention. So yeah, the science is wrong. But the more interesting questions are, where did this myth come from? Why did people want to believe it? And what is the deeper myth hiding underneath it all? Because before this was bad neuroscience, it was already a very strange way to talk about human potential. The myth likely started with a much softer idea from William James, one of the major American psychologists of the early 1900s. And he didn't say, you only use 10% of your brain. He said something much closer to, most people live below their possible capacities. And honestly, that's a pretty generous idea. It says, maybe there's more in you than you realize. But then the self-help industry got involved. And in 1936, in the introduction to Dale Carnegie's very famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, the writer and broadcaster Lowell Thomas credited William James with a much sharper version of the idea. The average person develops only 10% of his latent mental ability. And that's where the number starts doing a lot of heavy lifting, because people have untapped capacity as philosophy. People only use 10%? That sounds like somebody measured something. And over the next century, that slowly mutated into 10% of your brain. And when it reached its final form, people stopped asking questions. And we'll get to why in a moment. And eventually, like every attractive lie with confidence, it moved to Hollywood, finishing its journey from perhaps humans have more potential than they believe to what if Scarlett Johansson could use Microsoft Excel with her mind? Now, why this myth survives so well is because it's wrong in exactly the way humans love. It tells us our problem is not fear, grief, exhaustion, class, trauma, patience, or luck. No, the problem is that our true selves, our full potential, is locked away somewhere, inside part of the brain that apparently somebody forgot to turn on. And that is a very comforting fantasy, because if the problem is a lock, then all you need is a key. Not years of practice, not support from people, society, or government, not changing your life in slow, boring, inconvenient ways, just a key. And for a low, low price, someone is always very excited to sell it to you. That is why this myth is so powerful. It turns ordinary human frustration into a superhero origin story. You're not tired, you're just dormant. You're not overwhelmed, you're just unopened. You're not a person just struggling through life. You're a genius with a password problem. And the deeper myth hiding underneath it all? It's not just that we have unused brain, but that human potential can be measured that cleanly in the first place, which is a much more dangerous myth. Like every person is born with a little capacity meter waiting to be optimized. And if you're not successful enough, productive enough, or something enough, then something must be wrong with you. But human beings are not machines. And when someone claims they can measure how much of your potential you are using, most of the time, they're not revealing anything about your potential. They're revealing their own values and biases. Because potential for what? Money, status, power, creativity, peace, survival, getting through the day without crying in the bathroom? That's the part the myth never answers. Because the 10% myth sounds empowering. It sounds like it's saying you have untapped potential inside of you. But underneath that, it's also saying something much colder. You are not enough.